Hello, everybody. All right. Sorry for interrupting any conversations that were going on. Hey, Adele. I'm here with Catherine Plotz and Preston Van Loon. Catherine Plotz is from Blockchain at Berkeley. Preston Van Loon runs business development. Preston Van Loon is the co-founder of Prysmatic Labs. They today will be talking about the state of Ethereum 2.0. Before diving into it, just want to give a quick brief intro on what the Blockchain Acceleration Foundation is, and then we'll hop into it. So we are the Blockchain Acceleration Foundation, also known as BAF. We're a 501c3 nonprofit that accelerates blockchain education and adoption, primarily at universities. But now we're expanding sort of outwards of universities and into the general community with these weekly meetups. My name is Cameron Dennis. I'm the founder of it, and amazing team. Everyone's volunteer. We start accredited courses. We are running some research programs. And if you want to get involved with our beta recruiting program, you can fill out our membership application that we will drop in the chat. In short, what we're ultimately trying to do here is build an automated organization that is tax exempt, where people can donate crypto, receive a tax deduction for the donation. And what's great about donating crypto is that you don't pay capital gains on the amount that you donate. So your crypto can go a whole lot further. You can't just write off the amount that you donate in dollars, but you also don't pay capital gains. So that's really nice. So we're trying to create a very tangible way for people to donate crypto to accelerate crypto. And the way that we do it is through this membership application, where we match up people who have certain needs and want certain stuff, i.e. you're a company looking to recruit. Well, we have people to recruit. If you're a startup looking for investors, then we have investors in the network who are looking for a pipeline of projects. So ultimately what we're trying to do here is be this giant network of channels just to introduce people. And that's pretty much it. We can talk more about it later in the networking session after. But for now, I'm going to pass it on to Catherine, and she will take it away. Catherine, it's all you.
All right, thanks for the intro. I'm really excited to be here and look forward to this talk. I first spoke to Cameron a bit over a month ago and was really impressed. I really admire the work he's doing with the Blockchain Acceleration Foundation to increase the size of the blockchain ecosystem, while at the same time making it feel like a small, tight-knit, personal community. So thanks for inviting me to be a part of this. So now it's my turn to intro who we all came to hear speak, Preston. I'll give a high-level intro so that Preston can then dive into his own background and how it led to where he is today. So Preston's the co-founder of Prysmatic Labs, which builds technical infrastructure for the Ethereum blockchain to create better tooling for users and developers and increase adaptation, and is one of the first teams that looked into implementing ETH 2.0. Formerly at Google, Preston is co-leading and developing with the team to scale the Ethereum protocol with sharding and proof of stake, otherwise known as ETH 2.0. And we are really excited to hear about the state of ETH 2.0 and the work you are doing at Prysmatic Labs to make it a reality. So let's get started. First, we would love to hear about your background. From meeting many people in the blockchain space, I've found that no one has the same path to get to where they are. And so how did you get to where you are today, founding and working at Prysmatic Labs?
Yeah, hey, I'm really happy to be here. Co-founder, Prysmatic Labs. By the way, you've given the best intro that I've ever had, so thank you for that. Really appreciate it. Like you said, I was previously working at Google, and so I'm a career software engineer, and I'm attracted to hard problems and solving hard problems, particularly things that you can't just look up the answer, because a lot of things in computer science are repetition of patterns we've already used, and solving problems that usually have been solved before, at least when it comes to the majority of like web development and things like that. So I joined Google in 2016, and been working in the New York office there for a little while. And then in 2017, the summer of 2017, I had a friend introduce me to Ethereum. He said it's like Bitcoin, which I had heard of. I wasn't invested in it, but he said it's like Bitcoin, but you can run applications on it and it's fully decentralized. And first I thought, okay, well, what are you talking about? That sounds crazy. And he also said it claimed to be like a world computer. So I started reading about it and digging into exactly how it worked from a computer science perspective is extremely intriguing. And then after a few months, towards the end of the year, I had gotten to a point where I couldn't really dig any deeper in the protocol. And I was quickly realizing that this technology was incredibly slow. So even just in 2017, we were seeing single applications like CryptoKitties, which is a novelty collectible application. We saw CryptoKitties basically maxing out the network to its capacity, and even that was only in like 14 or 15 transactions per second. And to claim to be a world computer and to solve these problems that Ethereum can solve, but only have capacity for 15 transactions per second doesn't quite meet that goal. So I wanted to get involved. I wanted to bring some of my expertise and perspective to the project. So I met online with with Raul Jordan in particular. He and I met online. And then we met up in the office at Google in January 2018, and we just connected right away. We said, let's put a team together. Let's start messing around, starting to build what the early stages of E2 look like. At the time, we just had a white paper, or not even a white paper. I think it was just like a rough outline from the ETH research team, primarily Vitalik. And at the time, they were already planning to switch to proof of stake. And then we were talking about introducing sharding to the blockchain, and with that, we could get huge scalability gains. So from there, that's how I got involved. That's how I got sucked into the world of Ether, and I'm happy to be here and talk about that.
Great. Well, I'm sure we have a mixture of people in our audience from both technical and business backgrounds, but we would all love to hear, what's your definition of ETH 2? How would you describe it?
Great question. So the idea behind ETH 2 is we have two primary motivations. The first one being a transition to proof of stake. And what proof of stake is it's the new it's a different consensus mechanism. So how do the participants in a blockchain agree on the state of the blockchain? And with today's paradigm, we're using proof of work, which you might be familiar with, which is having computers solve a kind of a cryptographic puzzle. So they're basically trying to get they take the data of the block and they try to put some random number in there and come out with a partial hash collision, which is a difficult computer science problem. So with that, you can prove that this is probabilistically hard to do, but easy to verify. So that you have proof of work. And that's the Sybil resistance mechanism. So it makes it difficult. Not anyone can build a block, but if you did build a block and spend the time to do that, you're going to be rewarded for it and advancing the chain. We think that paradigm is really simple and works really well for what it does, but it's also a high barrier to entry for anyone who wants to be a block producer. To be able to mine a block in Ethereum or in Bitcoin, you need basically a whole warehouse full of computers in terms of computing power, and you need to spend a lot of energy. Typically, these at the median prices of energy, you probably would be operating a miner at a loss. So we see these mining operations that are utilizing solar, or they have free, subsidized, or cheap energy. But still, you have that upfront cost. So what we think we'll do with proof of stake is we'll lower that barrier to entry and make it easier for more people to be a block producer if you want to. You no longer need expensive hardware or complicated mining mining hardware, specific hardware. You can use consumer hardware that you have at home. Some clients that are being written for ETH2 can run on a mobile phone, so you can really reuse a lot of the stuff you already had. So that's one of the things we're working on. We're improving decentralization through proof of stake, the transition to proof of stake. The second thing we want to do with ETH2 is we want to increase the total blockchain's capacity for transactions. So what I was talking about before, where CryptoKitties is maxing it out, and if there's only room for one application like that on Ethereum, well, that's just not going to meet the goal. So what we'll do in ETH2 is we'll take the Ethereum blockchain and split it up into 64 parallel pieces. And with that, you get, it's kind of like going from a one-way street to a super highway. Now you have more lanes for more cars and more traffic to go through. They travel in parallel, but they can also communicate back and forth through the different parallel chains. You can switch chains. You can shards, rather, we call them shards in ETH2. So that's the second motivator to increase the total capacity. If we have 64 shards and the shards operate just like they do in Ethereum today, then we have 64 times the capacity, which is a huge improvement.
Could you also touch a bit about the phases of ETH2 and why were they split into beacon chain, sharding, and then execution?
It's another great question. So Ethereum 2 is a huge project. So first of all, we have this already successful and running blockchain that we have to transition. And we have with ETH2 a lot of components. So we have the proof of stake component is the biggest and hardest one. And then you have actually introducing the shards. So introducing this data layer. And then on top of that, we want to rewrite the virtual machine that all of the smart contracts live in, all of the smart contracts are executed. So with those three big components, we've broken them up. Instead of having one big, mega launch, we're going to do it in three smaller pieces. So being computer science people, we start counting at 0. So phase 0 is the beacon chain, which you can think of as proof of stake. The beacon chain, we call it that because it's like it's the center of our universe in ETH2. It keeps track of all the validators. It keeps track of our entropy. It keeps track of everything that's going to facilitate the rest of ETH2. That's probably the hardest one. And we've been working on that for 2.5 years. It's almost done. It's almost ready to go. So that's really exciting. And then shortly after that, after phase 0 launches with the beacon chain, we're going to launch phase 1, which is bringing in the shards, bringing in the data layer of the shards. So not having state execution yet, not having virtual machine yet. We're just going to, bring a little piece, and we're going to bring in those data shards. So we'll have more capacity for writing data, which can have some interesting applications. Even though there's no contract execution, you can still utilize this data for small things, like maybe you could put your website on there, which is relatively small, and it can never be removed except by you, kind of thing. So it brings true to that unstoppable application aspect of Ethereum. But it's really not as exciting as phase 2, which is the final big phase. We still have future plans behind phase 2, but this is the big one that makes the blockchain really usable. So adding on to those shards, where we have the data layer, we're going to add in the new execution environment. So having the new virtual machine and a contract execution, and then part of phase 2, maybe 6 months later, we're going to migrate everything from ETH1 to ETH2, and then sever the connection between the two. For the however many long months or years these two, ETH 2 and ETH 1 are running in parallel. That's going to be happening until we get through phase 2 and we're able to, take a snapshot of ETH 1 and sort of move everyone over in a clean manner. So those are the phases.
So now I guess we'll go into a bit of the questions the public's been wondering. So can you give us a bit of an idea of where exactly Prysmatic Labs is in the timeline of releasing, and why is it happening now versus earlier or later than scheduled? Like, what makes it different this time than all the other times you said it's going to be released soon?
I feel like we've been saying it'll be out soon for a year and a half now. So maybe we'll go into a little bit of the history of the last 2.5 years for some context. So like I said, Prysmatic Labs was formed at the beginning of 2018. And at that time, no one was working on ETH2 in terms of development. It's just research and ideas at that point. No one was even considering it, but we were really eager to get going. So we were going to try it out. We're going to start experimenting. That's why we're Prysmatic Labs. It's a laboratory where we can try things out, move quick, break stuff kind of thing. And by March, which is just 2 months later, it turned into a really real thing. So the Ethereum Foundation announced that they wanted to give out grants for people working on ETH2. So we got funded. We got funded through the Ethereum Foundation. They gave us $100,000 to start experimenting this, and they took us. We flew to Taipei, Taiwan, and kind of all got researchers and people interested in developing. We all got together and said, how are we going to do this? How are we going to build it? And what are we going to build exactly? So that was the first, real time that ETH2 started coming together. And since then, it has been rewritten like 3 times. So we had that first idea, what we thought it was going to be. And then by June, we said, you know what? We have this project where we want to bring in proof of stake. And we have this project where we want to bring in shards. Let's merge them together. So that's kind of, at that point, ETH2 starts resembling what it looks like today. So we worked on that for about a year, and then it was solidified. We thought, okay, this is the final thing. We're gonna mark it as frozen, and we're gonna build it, and then we're gonna ship it out. Later that year in 2019, we thought we were going to ship it out. And then we went all to DevCon, which is DevCon is the big annual conference for Ethereum developers and people that are interested in hearing talks like these. Super cool. If you ever get a chance to go to DevCon, it's an amazing experience. Definitely check it out. And if you're a student, I think they have deals for students. So think about that. Anyway, we went to DevCon, and DevCon's a place where we all talk about all the stuff we've been working on, but we also meet together and have that in-person communication where we can flesh out ideas. And what happened there is we decided, instead of having 1,024 shards, which is what we wanted to do initially, we decided to reduce it to 64 and kind of rework and tweak some of the parameters so that when you're talking about transactions from one shard to another, they could be facilitated faster. So that was a big reason for us to rework it. And then it was delayed, which some people were unhappy to hear about, but in the long run, they're going to prefer this rather than what we originally had, because it makes composability a lot better within DeFi contracts and things like that. So we redid it again in the fall of 2019, and since then we've been working on that and getting it together. And at this time, it's really in its final phase. So we're on the last sprint. For phase 0, we have all the clients. There's multiple client teams. Prysmatic Labs is one of them, and there are actually 7 of them. So we're all trying to build together and work on the same thing. So we have these clients that are working together and interoperating together on the final specification that we're all building to. And on Tuesday, we're launching the final test net. So we have a network where we can test out everything, how it's going to work at a full mainnet configuration. So running thousands of validators and getting everyone together. That launches on Tuesday, and we're going to run that for 2 to 3 months. And assuming there's no major problems in that time, that's one green light that we get. In another area, we've been running what we call attack nets, which are small test nets that we incentivize anyone to come and break it, come and attack it. So there's a $5,000 bounty on these attack nets. So if you think that you're pretty clever with finding security exploits and things like that, definitely check it out, because you could win this $5,000 bounty, and we get valuable information on how to make our software more secure. And then the third thing that we need is a bug bounty. So once we promote our client from an alpha stage to a beta stage, we're going to be running a bug bounty where if you're able to find specific software that are specific bugs within the software that cause issues within the client, we'll be rewarding bounties for that and paying up for that. It may not be an attack vector from like the networking perspective. So maybe not a remote attack, but something that, like if you're able to compromise someone's machine and I don't know, change their clock or something weird like that. We want to know how you were able to do that and how we can mitigate against it and how we can make the client better. And for finding these kind of exploits or bugs or reports, there will be a bounty reward for that. So those are the three things we need. Once we get those all running for the next 2 to 3 months, they run in parallel. Then we'll have green lights on everything. We have our software is audited by security auditing professionals, and then we're also considering a secondary security audit just for extra safety. But with all those things in mind, the ETH 2 phase 0 is going to launch in the next 3 to 4 months. So that's really exciting.
Everything goes smoothly over the next few months. You touched on multiple clients, which someone asked earlier. What does having multiple clients mean, and why is it important to have multiple clients? And what will having multiple clients look like on ETH 2?
So part of the ethos of Ethereum is having redundancy within the client implementations. So it's a little bit different from Bitcoin, which has like the Bitcoin core client, and that's sort of what everyone uses. There are other clients for Bitcoin, but none really that share the same kind of alternative that the multi-client from Ethereum does. So what we're trying to do is there are 7 client teams, and we don't necessarily need 7 clients, but we would like to have at least 3. And the reason being is that if we have 3 and they're evenly distributed across the users, so each client has about 33% of the participants on the network. If it's found that there is a critical bug in one of those clients, you have options to choose from. So you may want to switch over to client B when you were using client A because client A has a bug and it's going to take them 3 days to fix it, but you don't want to go offline, you don't want to be at risk. So you can switch over quickly, and while that team works on fixing their client, you can switch back if you like, or stay with client B. But having those options is the resiliency part of keeping Ethereum alive, especially when we like to add new features and do network upgrades rather often, where Bitcoin doesn't do that as often. They still do a lot of upgrades, but the ones that Ethereum do are typically can be susceptible to a consensus split. If clients are not agreeing on the state of the world, they could split off into 2 different chains. So maybe that's an argument against having 2 or more clients, but really we think that as long as there are at least 3, you have good options to choose from.
And another thing that I consulted my club earlier, asking them what type of questions they had for you. So I'm the messenger. It might sound a bit forward, but someone was wondering if it's too late for ETH 2. And they were arguing that besides EVM, the need for ETH 2 has already been filled by a lot of other protocols. So what's your stance on this? And why is the upcoming ETH 2 product what the blockchain world needs right now? Is it what the blockchain world needs at the moment?
Yep, good question. And I like this one because it's also you can think of it as like, why am I wasting my time on Ethereum if like, to be the devil's advocate, why am I spending so much time working on ETH2? Why am I talking about this so much when there are other protocols that don't have the disadvantage of migrating in this existing chain? They can just start fresh. So my go-to answer for that is that Ethereum has this incredible momentum. It has thousands of applications, and the space with DeFi is completely unmatched in any other platform. And most importantly is that the developer community and all of the people around Ethereum are it's just an incredible group of people to work with. If you've ever been to a hackathon, an Ethereum hackathon, they're incredible. So they're usually put on by a group called ETH Global, and they usually do them all around the world. They do several of them in the US, and they've done them in the Bay Area. They've done them all over. And what I've seen is just, this is completely unmatched with any other blockchain. So yeah, we're going to move a little slower than other, competing blockchains that maybe solve the same problem. But whether or not ETH2 is too late, I don't think so. I think we're all still really early in this space, and ETH2 is not the only scaling solution out there. We have even today, we have options for zero knowledge rollups where you can have thousands of transactions batched into one proof, which then can be committed onto the chain. So this is really helpful for things like decentralized exchanges, where they don't want to write every transaction to the blockchain because it would just not be feasible for a high volume exchange. But they could, batch these every few minutes, and they would save on gas, and they could get all these things done, and it's still done in trustless fashion. So there are many scaling solutions. ETH2 is just one of the biggest ones because it involves the core protocol, but it's just going to get even better from there. And having all the momentum, all the developers, all the researchers, all working on this, it's really hard to beat that. You could raise a lot of money through venture capital, but it's still really hard to get a group like Ethereum does.
All right, thanks. Sort of switching focuses now. Could you give us some updates on Onyx, and what have been some of your learnings from the Onyx public testnet?
Yeah, so Onyx is Prysmatic Labs testing grounds. It's our testnet that we've been working on since the beginning of the year. And it's been an awesome experience. We love to have users come in and experiment and test out. Most importantly, they can test out their hardware, their setup, their software, and make sure that they're configured for mainnet, but also what to expect. So what is it going to be like when you're running ETH2? You can try this in a riskless fashion. If you screw up and lose all your money, well, it's just funny money anyway. It's all test money. So it's not that big of a deal. We've been running that testnet. There's been other multi-client testnets that have been running for the last couple months. But on Tuesday, we're shutting everything down. We're shutting Onyx down. And we're all migrating to the new testnet, which is the final one. It's called Medela. which stands for metal. It is the biggest. It's going to be the biggest one that we've ever done, and it's going to involve all the clients that are ready for it. So there's going to be at least 4 clients participating from Genesis. And that's going to be our final sprint. So if you really want to see what it's like to stake on ETH2 just for fun, or if you're planning to stake for ETH2 on mainnet, starting on Tuesday is going to be a great time to participate. Also, if you'd like to be part of the Genesis, so if you want to be one of the validators that started the system, you can send your deposit today with some test Ether, not real Ether. You can send your test deposit today, and on Tuesday when it launches, you can start validating right away. So I highly recommend, if you're interested at all, either from a learning perspective or maybe you see it as a business opportunity, definitely check out the next testnet, Medela.
Awesome. But what have been some of your takeaways, I guess, from the Onyx public testnet as you start working with your final testnet, trying to implement, or the last steps before you have to implement ETH 2.0?
Yeah, so sorry to answer that, but we've learned a lot from this experience. So collecting user feedback's been very helpful, but also running a distributed network in a chaotic environment is really hard to simulate. So we have lots of tests, lots of unit tests, integration tests, end-to-end tests. We do all kinds of testing, but there's nothing that really compares to having hundreds of thousands of people all across the world trying to finalize some data. So we've learned a lot from that. We've got a lot of user feedback on terms of like what could make it more usable. So on the user experience side, we've actually been running testnets for a year and a half now. And at first it was on fire all the time. We have, when something bad is happening, it makes our phone ring. And I'll tell you what, I was up every night trying to figure out what's going on, sleeping on the couch because I didn't want to wake up my wife, kind of thing. But today we don't get paged at all anymore. So it's incredibly stable. When we kind of first got to that point where it was stable, we thought something was wrong with our alerting system. So we're all kind of paranoid because we're used to it, the phone ringing every hour, and now it's incredibly stable. So we learned a lot about some optimizations, some infrastructure, and some user feedback and new features that people wanted to have that we didn't know about.
Awesome, great. Okay, another question that someone was wondering earlier was regarding sharding development, and they're wondering, it's sort of a general question, but what are your thoughts on the current state of sharding development? Where do you see it going, and do you think it's heading in the right direction?
So ETH2 and its development has had some setbacks, as we said before, where we had to rethink our design, and then we agreed to rework it or redo it to some degree, and that delays the project in general. So sometimes that's frustrating, but overall it's for the greater good. So we embrace that ultimately. I think that a development now, we've kind of figured out the best way to work together. This is a scenario that's unlike anything I've worked in before. Working at big companies where everyone's internal, and you kind of have this top-down direction. There's no there's a CEO of Google, and he's sort of directing everyone. And you have VPs and managers and all this stuff, and you have all this hierarchy. Where in ETH2 development, it's pure chaos, right? Everyone is doing whatever, and no one's ultimately in charge. We have leaders of certain components that we listen to, but really it's decentralized development, and everyone's sort of working at their own pace, at their own rate, and working in the way that they like to, and meeting their goals. And somehow we're all pulling it off together. And every 2 weeks we meet up on a Zoom meeting and sync on what we're working on. It's just been getting better and easier as time goes on, especially when it's such a globally distributed team. of people, it's pretty incredible to see. So I think we're going in the right direction. I think research is progressing nicely, development's going nicely. We're getting a rhythm on, and we have pretty high velocity at this point.
As we start to wind down and before we get to the audience Q&A portion, everyone wants to be a part of ETH 2.0 and helping out. So, I mean, there's open source, there's a lot of ways to contribute. How do you think the community can get involved, and maybe some both conventional, not so conventional ways? And then adding on to that, I'm a university student. What do you think the role of universities in this new decentralized net will be?
Good question. So I think in general, there are a lot of different avenues you can explore. So the first type of person I think of is someone who's just interested in running the software and being a validator. So try it out, read the documentation, ask questions. We're on Discord, on Twitter, on Telegram. We're all online somewhere. So if you have questions, we're happy to answer that. And we really like questions. Even if you think it might be a silly question, we like to hear that because it means that we didn't do enough documentation. You should be able to find answers to all of your questions. And if you can't find that, then we would like to hear that and do better. So yeah, as a user, try it out, give us user feedback, tell us what you think. As a software engineer or developer or a computer science student, I would recommend taking a look at the code and maybe the specification and trying to understand, what is it really doing? Because that is an interesting problem, and and if you're also one of the users that wants to be a validator, it will help you feel more comfortable doing that because you really understand what's going on from the technical level, from the protocol level. And we love questions about the code too, because if the code is not easy to understand or not readable, then we want to fix that too. Just a general student perspective, I definitely recommend looking at the specification, looking at the economics of it. So there's a whole, with blockchain, there's this whole, it's basically a game. So you're trying to figure out how can you incentivize people to act one way and disincentivize them from acting another way. And that's a pretty interesting problem to solve. So you could take a look at the economics perspective of it. That's pretty interesting. Just reading the white papers are cool. I think that's cool. That's where I started out, is just reading the white paper or the yellow paper for ETH2. And then as you get more involved with Ethereum, check out what people are building on top of it. So we have a lot of creative projects working in the DeFi space, which stands for decentralized finance. So people are creating financial instruments every day, and it's really exciting and cool. People are creating games. They're creating all kinds of stuff, solving all kinds of interesting problems. So definitely check it out. And if you need some direction, or you'd like specific direction, I'm available online all the time, and you can ask me anything. It may take me a day or two to get back to you, depending on what's going on the ETH2 space, but always happy to help answer those kind of questions and point you in the right direction.
You up on that offer. So I guess the final question is, what are you most excited about as you near the launch of ETH2?
I'm ready for it to get out there. Honestly, we've been working on it for so long, and it's just been this really crazy, exciting project really coming together. So I'm, eager to get that out there, but also kind of nervous because when we start this thing, it's millions of dollars at stake. Millions of dollars of real people entrusting in our software to work, and that's both exciting from an impact perspective, but also a little bit scary because of the downside risk. So I have mixed emotions about launching. I'm definitely looking forward to the Genesis, the launch date for ETH2 Phase 0. It's going to be a really exciting day. In in terms of bigger picture, my goal with joining Ethereum and working on this effort has been to get this technology to be accessible for everyone and to have it in everyone's pocket. I think there are a lot of people in the world that could really benefit from decentralized technology like this. So there are the unbanked people out there that either they can't use the bank or they don't trust the bank. So they're more at risk and could really benefit from this technology, or people that need better identity solutions or supply chain or all kinds of things. There's lots of stuff you can do on blockchain that's not just games or financial instruments. So really excited for the next 5 years of Ethereum. By the way, today is Ethereum's 5th birthday, or maybe it was yesterday, but this week we're celebrating 5 years of Ethereum, so that's really exciting.
Ethereum. Oh, great. Yeah. So, okay. Up next, I guess, is the audience Q&A. I don't know if Cameron wants me to take care of this, unless it's me. So let's get started. The first question is, I can't say who they're from. It doesn't give me that option. Maybe it does, but okay, it's from Anonymous. It says, what are the pros and cons of becoming a validator early on, so in phase 0 versus later in phase 2? And I guess, do you have a recommendation?
Great. So the pros and cons are that, so the pro would be that the incentives are higher. So when you're part of, when the validating set is smaller, so we need 16,384 validators to start, and each of them are providing 32 ETH. So that's under a million Ether, but at a million Ether, the APR interest rate you can expect is around like 15% or 17%. But as the pool grows to, let's say, 30 million, then the rate has reduced to maybe 6% or 5%. I don't know the numbers off my top of my head, but that's the incentive for getting in early. The cons for that are that there's going to be less tooling right away. It'll be really early software, so you might need to have a bit of experience running your own kind of server or computer. You want to keep that online as much as possible, and you want to keep it secure. You don't want anyone to get access to that shouldn't have access to it. So it'll be a little bit harder to use at first, but as time goes on, it gets easier. There'll be more tooling. There'll be, graphical interfaces you can use, and so if you're not afraid of the command line, then you're a candidate for phase 0. But if that scares you, then maybe wait a little while.
Someone else is wondering if you predict proof of stake will become a dominant consensus mechanism in the space, or do you see it maybe going to other proof of blanks in the future?
Yeah, so I think it has. Proof of work still definitely will have a place in the blockchain ecosystem. Bitcoin specifically is never going to change from proof of work, but proof of stake is I think going to be really attractive for newer blockchains or people thinking about building blockchains. The problem that I see with that is that it's kind of hard to bootstrap a network like that. Ethereum has a particularly different scenario because they already have this blockchain running. They already have a circular supply that's been somewhat distributed. But when you get something that's like a venture capital based bootstrapping, then you see large pieces of centralization in there. And that's not to say that Ethereum doesn't, because they also had like an ICO kind of thing, or initial coin offering, where some individuals ended up with a very impressive amount of Ether, and maybe they still do this time. But I think Ethereum's better off in terms of bootstrapping proof of stake. So I don't know, it could go either way. Proof of work is really simple, and it does its job very effectively. It's just not very energy efficient.
Building off of that question, Ishan's wondering what your thoughts are on proof of stake versus other consensus mechanisms like proof of history or authority and Avalanche consensus.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely a lot of options out there. I'm not too familiar with Avalanche. I know this that's kind of a new thing coming up. But things like proof of authority, we use that pretty often for the testnet, and that's really great for some solutions. So you can imagine, like, if you just need a quorum between um, 10 companies that all work together, but they sort of don't trust each other. Maybe you use a proof of authority because you don't really need to spend a lot of resources. It doesn't make sense to stake a lot of capital because maybe the underlying asset doesn't actually have value. They're just trying to agree on maybe like supply chain related stuff, or maybe they're trying to agree on wire transfers, but there's actually no value exchange. They're just agreeing on receipts, basically. Something like proof of authority would make a lot more sense. It just kind of depends on the scenario. I think proof of stake is right for Ethereum, but it really depends on what your use case is. There are a lot of different options and a lot of different solutions, and you kind of have to tailor the right solution for the right problem.
All right, got it. Adam's asking regarding sharding, can you discuss how cutting the network into 64 pieces affects security from a practical perspective? For example, is a smaller individual shard still probabilistically relatively secure?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm glad someone asked this because we didn't go over it, but all of the shards share the same community or the same security pool. So the validators are shuffled around frequently against all of the shards. So it is still very difficult in terms of capital requirement to take majority of a shard. And even if you try to, there are pieces in the protocol that discourage that. So part of proof of stake is that you can get slashed, which means to lose some part or all of your underlying collateral. So I think, yeah, it doesn't compromise on security because they share the same security pool. But it is definitely an interesting question. Thanks for asking that.
Cameron's wondering, hi Cameron, can you explain the exploit that Johnny Ria did?
I cannot explain that right now because it ended up being bigger than we thought, and we have to responsibly disclose it. But expect a big update in the next 3 or 4 days.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah.
Adam's wondering, how do you decide how much money to incentivize bug bounties and attack nets to make it more valuable than, say, sitting on the attack to use as a 0-day on the mainnet? And I guess I'm also just wondering more about the economics behind ETH 2.0 as well.
Yeah, so that's a good question. We think that in general there will be more white hat people than black hat people. So white hat being someone who wants to like hack for good or a positive outcome, where a black hat's sort of selfishly motivated. But the thing is, with a lot of these exploits that are possible, is that you don't really benefit from it. Like, you won't profit monetarily from these kind of attacks. So you might as well, disclose it and secure the $5,000 than potentially just annoy people later. So, like, if you were able to find an exploit where you could send me a particular message that crashes my client, well, my client's going to restart or disconnect from you or eventually figure it out. So you kind of just annoyed me for a little while, but you didn't really gain anything. If we're talking about maybe a potential exploit at the protocol layer, we think we've mitigated that pretty well because it's been formally verified, which means it's been run through a team that does formal verification, formal analysis on that. So that's pretty sound. And I don't think that, you're not going to find something at the protocol layer, but you will find something that disturbs a client or disturbs the state of the chain. So maybe you could disrupt it for a little while. And I guess if you were, I guess you could profit from that. Maybe I shouldn't say it, but I'll say it anyway. You could profit from that is if you were able to attack the chain and reduce confidence in it, and you held a short position on ETH. The price would go down, and you would profit from your short position. So please don't do that. But we think of these adversarial attacks all the time. So there's definitely a possibility that there will be somebody out there that wants to hold onto an exploit until day zero. But what we're hoping is there will be more eyes on more white hat type people looking to gain that bounty.
Yeah. Do you think ETH 2.0 could potentially splinter the community? Someone's wondering that. Or do you think people could just, if they don't like something about ETH 2, just build off of that?
Yeah, so this is a really radical change. We should expect that there will be some part of the community that does not want to participate in ETH2 and carry on. Kind of like when there was a big issue on the network where it's called the DAO hack. We had something called a DAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization, and there was the DAO on Ethereum, which had millions of dollars of ether in there, and someone found a way to drain it and basically take all that money out, and it had something like 10% of the whole network. So what the community decided to do in Ethereum is to do an irregular state change and basically undo or lock that person's the hacker's collaterals or the hacker's funds, so they couldn't actually use it. But some people thought Ethereum should be permanently immutable and you shouldn't be able to do that. And from that became Ethereum Classic. So now we have Ethereum and we have Ethereum Classic. And I kind of expect that there will be people that don't want to switch to ETH2. I don't really understand why, because it'll behave exactly the same. You don't lose the immutability that we had before. It's just faster. There's a few little quirks about it because there's a little bit more overhead with cross shard transactions, but overall, like it's a big network upgrade. So I expect that the group of people that don't want to participate will be rather small.
Interesting. Eric asks a great question. He's wondering if dApps built on ETH1 will become operable or even benefit from being on ETH2.
Yeah, so they are going to be operable. That's the plan. And they will benefit from ETH2 because each shard will have its own gas market. And if you're familiar with how gas works, it's what we're willing to pay for a transaction because there are fees with each transaction. And as there's more demand on the blockchain, those fees go up. But you can imagine that each shard would be like a city, and some cities get really populated, and the gas fees are going up. And you can migrate your contract to a different shard that's maybe has a lower population, lower demand, and fees will be cheaper. So that will make a lot of sense. You'll also benefit from the overall network throughput. So having 64 times more throughput means that a lot of the stuff that's not related to your application is going on somewhere else, and you're not really impacted by, like, if CryptoKitties, that collectible application, if that blew up again, and they're maxing out basically the capacity of their shard. If your application is not on that shard, then you don't care because your fees are lower.
Someone's wondering if you see ETH2 leading us to a mass adoption, like the way ETH1 changed the world perspective on crypto, and as something beyond just a currency.
Beyond a currency, well, it is a little bit. It already is a bit beyond a currency because, at least I personally think ETH is money. It's a very liquid type of money. It's more kind of like fuel for your application, but it has value, and it does operate as some kind of a store of value. It's just as volatile as other stores of value, but has a dual purpose of having utility in terms of fueling applications. But with ETH 2, you also have this application platform, which is truly unique, to software. Before Ethereum, there wasn't really anything quite like this. Vitalik, the founder of Ethereum, he compared it to like an app store on your iPhone or your Android phone, where you have this base platform where everything can run, and now you can install whatever you want, run whatever you want, and there's no Apple approval process. There's no moderation with that, so you can run any kind of application you want, and you don't have to worry about the consequences of it. In terms of a centralized company saying, we don't like this type of behavior, so we're going to shut it down.
Great. Another question I thought was pretty interesting. I mean, ETH 2 has been in the works for ages at this point, but I was wondering, after you finish your work with phase 0 of ETH 2, will you be focusing on ETH 3, or will you not be thinking about that for a while? You'll be taking a break.
Maybe a short break. I don't know if I could take more than a week off, I'd probably go crazy, because I just love thinking about this stuff. But after ETH 2, there's still a lot more to be done. We have a lot more layer 2 scaling solutions. So layer 1 being the protocol layer. So we're going to upgrade layer 1, and things that build on top of that would be layer 2. So as I mentioned before, there's like ZK rollups and other ways of scaling on top of that. The mission with Prysmatic Labs is to continue to bring value to the community. We're community funded. That's a big part of how we are able to sustain ourselves. So our mission with that is to build tools and infrastructure to give to the community for free, to make Ethereum more accessible for everybody. So the fun doesn't stop after ETH2, it's just getting started.
I guess we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Andreas is wondering, what is the current state and roadmap of Stateless Clients?
That's a good question. Stateless Clients is, I believe, part of the refactoring for phase 2. And I'm not too familiar on the latest research on that, because we've been kind of heads down on phase 0. But if you'd like, we can follow up offline, and I can help point you in the right direction to find the latest research and ideas around that. So I don't have an answer for that right now.
All right, let me just take a look and see. If you have any more questions, put them in the chat now. Hold on 1 second. Let's see. Okay, since asynchronous cross-shard calls are not feasible if you think about DeFi protocols, this is what Andreas is wondering again. What is your opinion on the state of synchronous cross-shard calls versus required transaction finalization times?
Yeah, so that was a big reason why we changed from 1,024 shards, is because cross-shard transactions would take far too long. Now at this point, they can be done in just a few slots. So a slot is a time period on ETH2 where a block is expected to be produced. I don't know the specifics of it because I haven't looked at it in a while. But
sorry, Preston. One quick second. Someone, the chat's just wondering if you can explain what the question means for those with not as technical a background.
Oh, the question. Okay, so the question is, how does cross-shard transactions affect smart contracts? So in ETH2, we have different shards, right? We've been talking about that for a little bit, and on each shard might live a different contract. And say, for example, you wanted to take your CryptoKitty collectible and feed it to your Crypto Zombie, which is, I think, a real thing, or your Cheese Wizard or whatever. Like, there's so many fun little things. But that contract happens to live on another shard. So how's it going to work, and how long is it going to take? Because these shards are sort of they're all linked together, but they also operate in parallel and independent. So at the moment, my understanding is that we have like a 3-point. It's like a 3-step process rather. So what you'll do is you'll initiate the transaction saying, I want to operate this on another chain. And what the validator from your local chain is going to do is they're going to commit that to the beacon chain, which is the backbone of the whole system. It's how they're all the shards are interconnected, and you'll get like a pending receipt back. Then you're going to see the validator on the shard you were wanting to talk to is going to pick up that transaction and execute it, and then return with a final receipt, and then you'll collect the final receipt, or the validator in your local shard will collect the final receipt and update the state based on the result of that. That's kind of the vague high level answer. I wish I could explain it better, but I haven't looked at it in a little while.
So thanks. So I guess that's all the time we have for now. There'll be a networking session after this if you can stay around. But thanks, Preston. I had a really great time speaking to you. I don't come from a traditional technical background. I'm a math major, don't know too much coding at the moment, but having conversations with people in this space has been really valuable, and I learned a lot from speaking with you. So thanks for taking the time to do this. And I really look forward to see what happens in the coming months, and best of luck to you and all at Prysmatic Labs. Cameron?
Thank you, both of you, for taking the time to do this. I feel like almost all the community's questions were answered, which is incredible. So really do appreciate both of you for hopping on. Feel free to stick around for the networking portion. I was just thinking, like, what a great day to talk about this. It's Ethereum's 5th birthday. I did not plan it this way. It just kind of, happened. So super cool stuff. Thank you, everyone, for joining. This video will be made available after if you want to go back and review anything. We uploaded to our YouTube account. And before we head out, just one last time, if you're interested in learning more about the Blockchain Acceleration Foundation, you can check out our website down there. I just added it to the chat. If you are interested in becoming a member, as a member, you get access to our Discord channel. Preston's in the Discord channel. Catherine's in the Discord channel. It's kind of where the community lies and where we're going to communicate, like where we communicate, share best practices. I'm going to start running a weekly intro to blockchain call in that Discord. So like if you have questions about basic blockchain knowledge or like want to learn more, just hop in there. It's probably gonna be like every Tuesday at like a certain time. Just keep it consistent, be there. Besides that, recruiting program, if you're looking for a job in this space, there's companies that come to me looking for people to hire. Fill out the application. If you're a student, then it will prompt you to drop your resume, tell us what you're looking for. And if you're interested in donating to BAF, all of the stuff that we do is 100% free for the community. Dropped our donation link there. We are we're trying to make enough money to start a validator program that will in turn, I'm working out the legality with all of this because there's a lot of so essentially what we want to do is run validators for certain protocols, pay people in cryptocurrency for those validators, have the people be able to stake that money back into our validator and have them earn consistent rewards on the events and stuff that they host. So if any of you wanted to, let's say, like run an Ethereum meetup or something along those lines, you'll get paid in ETH and then be able to like sort of stake it back into our validator. The wrong hat. Yes, I do love ETC. I also love ETH, but yes, we are running an investment fund. This is where we're talking to lawyers and trying to work that out. We're tax exempt nonprofit, so not trying to get any trouble there. But that is about it. Turn on your mics and cameras for the networking event. We'll hop into that now. And thank you both of you again for hopping on. And see you guys soon.
Thanks.